It was supposed to be just another night for Daniel Huxley. The billionaire heir to the Huxley empire, Daniel was used to control every aspect of his life designed for precision, from the timing of his morning coffee to the measured silence of his penthouse. But control, he would soon learn, could vanish in a heartbeat. The rain came down in sheets that evening, drumming against the windshield as Daniel's black Mercedes sliced through the quiet outskirts of Atlanta. His thoughts were far away on the deal that went wrong, the press waiting to spin his failure, and the hollow echo of his father's voice reminding him that weakness was not an option. He pressed harder on the accelerator, the city lights fading behind him. Then it happened a figure darted across the road, the sound of brakes screaming. The thud. Silence. Daniel froze. His heart raced as he flung open the car door. The world blurred into the roar of rain and panic. On the wet asphalt lay a woman young, shivering, clutching her stomach. Her dress was soaked, her face pale but striking. And under the dim streetlight, Daniel saw it, she was pregnant. He rushed to her side, stammering apologies, his voice trembling. "Miss, I didn't see you. Please, stay with me, okay?" Her eyes fluttered open for a moment, glassy with pain, but there was something calm in them too. "Please, the baby," she whispered. Without another thought, Daniel lifted her carefully and carried her into the car, his hands shaking. He drove faster than he ever had before, heading straight for St. Catherine's Hospital. Every red light, every second felt like eternity. When they reached the emergency entrance, doctors and nurses rushed out. They took her inside, leaving Daniel drenched and motionless under the awning. He stood there, breathless, guilt flooding through him like poison. He didn't even know her name. Hours passed. The rain stopped, but the storm inside him didn't. Daniel sat in the hospital waiting area, his expensive clothes clinging to him, his phone buzzing endlessly with missed calls. He ignored them all. Then a nurse approached. "She's stable," she said softly. "The baby too, for now." Daniel exhaled in relief, his shoulders sagging. "Can I see her?" he asked. The nurse nodded. Inside the dim hospital room, the woman lay unconscious, hooked to monitors. Her dark curls framed her face like a halo. Daniel stepped closer, and that's when he saw it. A delicate silver bracelet on her wrist, half hidden under the blanket. It caught the faint light from the monitor. Etched on it, in worn engraving, were two words that froze him where he stood. Huxley Estate. His family name. Daniel's mind went blank. He reached for the bracelet, his hand trembling, as if touching it would confirm the impossible. He turned it over, finding another engraving beneath, Eleanor Huxley. His mother's name. He staggered back, nearly losing his balance. That bracelet had belonged to his late mother. He remembered her wearing it at every charity gala, every photo, until she died 15 years ago. It was supposed to have been buried with her. How could this woman, this stranger, be wearing it? He stepped out into the hallway, his pulse racing. Everything about this night felt unreal. "Who is she?" he asked the nurse. "Her name's Alina," the nurse said, checking her chart. "No ID, no phone, just that bracelet. She's about 6 months along. We were lucky you brought her in when you did." Daniel's thoughts spiraled. Who was Alina? Why did she have his mother's bracelet? And most of all, what was she doing on that road in the middle of the storm? He stayed through the night, unable to leave. By dawn, exhaustion pulled at his eyes, but he couldn't rest. When Alina finally woke, her voice was weak but clear. "You stayed," she whispered. Daniel moved closer, guilt and curiosity twisting inside him. "I had to," he said softly. "I hit you. I'm so sorry." She smiled faintly. "You didn't mean to." Her calmness unnerved him. Then he gestured toward her wrist. "That bracelet, where did you get it?" Her expression changed. Something deep flickered behind her eyes' pain, maybe fear. "It was my mother's," she said. Daniel's heart skipped. "Your mother?" Alina nodded slowly. "She told me it belonged to someone who once helped her, someone who saved her when she was young." She looked at him, then really looked, and her eyes widened. "You look just like the man in the photo she kept." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. What photo? the one of him with a woman. She said their kindness changed her life. Their names were Eleanor and Charles Huxley. Daniel's world tilted. His parents, his mother Eleanor and his father Charles. The same parents who had always been secretive about a summer they spent in Savannah years before he was born. He sank into the chair beside her bed, his voice barely a whisper. "Alina, what was your mother's name?" "Clara," she said softly. "Clara Moore." Daniel closed his eyes. He remembered the name. Clara Moore had been one of the Huxley housekeepers 2 decades ago. She had vanished suddenly after his mother's death, leaving behind rumors and unanswered questions. Now, her daughter was lying here wearing his mother's bracelet, carrying a child, and Daniel's car had almost killed her. The irony was suffocating. "Do you have anyone I can call?" he asked quietly. Alina shook her head. "No one. It's just me." Something in her voice broke him. He had spent his life surrounded by luxury, yet he'd never felt so powerless. That night, when the doctor told him Alina would need weeks of rest, Daniel made a decision he couldn't explain, not to the press, not even to himself. He booked her a private suite in the hospital, paid every bill, arranged for her meals, her care, and, when Alina protested weakly, he simply said, "I owe you more than you know." But deep down, Daniel wasn't doing it out of guilt. He was doing it because he couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were connected in ways neither of them yet understood. Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, glinting off the rain-drenched streets. Daniel looked at her sleeping form one last time before leaving the room. The bracelet shimmered faintly on her wrist, catching the light. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt something stirring inside him, something he hadn't felt since his mother died. Hope and fear. Because whatever truth lay behind that bracelet, he knew it would change everything he believed about his family. For the next few days, Daniel couldn't focus on anything else. The board meetings, the press calls, all of it blurred into background noise. Every night, he found himself back at the hospital, sitting quietly by Alina's bedside, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing. Sometimes she'd talk in her sleep, whispering names, memories that sounded like fragments of another world. One night, he heard her murmur, "Eleanor, she promised she'd come back." Daniel's chest tightened. The more he learned, the more tangled the truth became. He asked the hospital staff for Alina's records, but there was almost nothing, no family listed, no address. It was as if she lived in the shadows her whole life. Finally, unable to take it anymore, Daniel drove to his family's old estate, the Huxley mansion, that stood silent on the hill. Dust coated the portraits on the walls, and his mother's smiling face seemed to watch him as he walked through the empty halls. He found the family archives in her old study photo albums, letters, journals, and there, hidden inside a worn envelope, was a faded photograph. His mother, Eleanor Huxley, standing beside a young black woman, her arm around her shoulder, both smiling warmly. On the back, written in Eleanor's looping handwriting, "To Clara, with love family, isn't always by blood." Daniel stared at the words, his throat tightening. Family, not by blood. Suddenly, everything made sense. The bracelet, Alina's story, his mother's kindness. Eleanor must have given the bracelet to Clara as a symbol of gratitude, maybe even protection. Clara's daughter, Alina, had inherited not just the bracelet, but a legacy of a promise kept. When he returned to the hospital, Alina was sitting up for the first time, sunlight falling across her face. She looked stronger. He handed her the photo. Her lips parted, trembling as she touched it. That's my mother," she whispered. "She used to talk about this woman all the time, said she was the only person who ever treated her like family." Daniel nodded, emotion clouding his voice. "That woman was my mother." Silence filled the room, the kind that feels like the world has stopped spinning. Alina's eyes filled with tears. Then, "I guess fate brought us together." He managed a small smile. "Maybe it did. Maybe it's time the Huxleys finally did right by someone again." She looked down at her stomach, her hand resting gently there. "Do you really believe we can?" Daniel reached out, his voice calm and certain. "I think my mother would have wanted that." For the first time in years, Daniel felt peace, not the kind money could buy, but the kind born from redemption. The bracelet on Alina's wrist glimmered faintly in the morning light, a quiet reminder that sometimes destiny doesn't ask for permission. It simply finds its way back home.